Perfect. Just as I started the stream. David says, bong. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and completely disembodied soul Justin, as he was so busy this morning that he pulled some magical shenanigans to pre-start the stream so that it would start when I came on. So yeah, he's like, we have moved beyond. Justin has moved into the beyond. He'll hopefully be back. How are y'all? Hello. Rotten Treats. I like that name. Hello. I am Anne. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Hey, thanks for the resub, Jedi Jared. Yay, 23 months. Dang. No. Hashtag almost professional. Hey, Krios. Oh, dearie. So, as you all have a good weekend. Fubeka, thank you. 2 months. Oh, you're on a streak. Exciting. Hashtag send me my stuff. Justin no longer has a physical form. Aw, no fair. I wanted to be a Ghost of the Machine. It's not fair Justin gets to be in a Ghost of the Machine before I do. Dang it. Good morning, Dogfather. Oh, set up a new PC. That's exciting, Warshadow. I was just talking about I'm going to have to bite the financial bullet and get myself a new laptop. Mine is starting to fizzle. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I'd call it higher. He's evolved to something. Devolved? I don't know. As long as he's not becoming Voltron, we're okay. Because then he'd have to be composed of 5 different lions, and that would be really weird. Ah, good. Brush twirl! You know, Fubeka, that actually illustrates something, which is that so often we mini painters just do stuff because it works, and we haven't really noticed that we've started doing it. And so I had to stop and really deconstruct. And now that I've noticed that, it's something that I'm going to work into my core curriculum. So I think as miniature painters, if you're starting to teach other people who are new, kind of like if you're getting results and they're not getting results, kind of stop and really deconstruct what you're doing. Like, you know, make yourself do it, not think too much about it, and notice the little things you do because they can make a huge difference, right? Worst time in a decade to be buying a new computer. Good. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. And just think, you led me to notice it because I had not noticed it before. So yeah, sweet, awesome. Oh, guess what, guys? Wet palette day. We're doing wet palette today because I decided I didn't want to clean my palette again for just a few colors. So we're gonna like be moving wet palette in and out of frame because wet palette tends to, as you can see, darken everything, and also it tends to turn everything blue. So I normally would be no wet palette. Yeah. So okay. So here's the dealio, Carrie Michael. Yeah, and not speed paint, but when you have, I mean, it's when you have just a few details left, guys. Okay. So in this case, we're gonna be doing like shading and highlighting. Sorry, got dwarf in focus. Get in focus, dwarf. When you just are doing like details like, you know, the black, the purple, it's small areas, it's stuff that's not terribly important. You want to kind of just get it done and move on. When you're doing things like that, switching to a wet palette can be nice because you're not trying to get perfect blends, right? So you don't need your well palette, you know, for transitions. And since you're only usually working with 2 colors here, like I'll be working with the purple and probably an off-white or a pink or something like that for his highlights. Or maybe, an icy violet, something like that. So only 2 colors, right? And with the black, I'm going to be working probably with blue liner and white. So since I'm only working with 2 colors on each of those surfaces, I don't need really the well palette. Like, I can just build little transitional highlights on my wet palette here. So I don't need to have all those wells set up. In fact, it just sets me up for more cleanup at the end of the day. Whereas here, I can just ball up my parchment and throw it away if I feel like not cleaning it. So for little stuff like this, where it's a very simple color transition and you really are just hitting the details and you want to work as somebody just pointed out, work fast. Oh, Grey Wolf just pointed out. It also helps you work fast. So you're not persnicketying it. You're just kind of spot blending on the fly. Yeah, wet palette is not the best for metallics, Kroniko, so when we get to the metallics, I will likely move to the well. But I want to get purple and black done today, so we're going to do that, and we're going to do the silver metallics last. And yeah, otherwise I think he's... then we can do the basing, too. Basing is another good thing. Yeah. I mean, if you have parchment, baking parchment paper, and you have a sponge, and you have a Tupperware that the sponge will fit, you can make a travel wet palette, Castlex. It's very easy. I mean, you need a sponge, hopefully one with a fairly smooth backside, like if you have a two-sided sponge where one is kind of wobbly. I mean, you can use a big porous sponge if you want, but as you can see, the ones they sell with the wet palette are pretty smooth. You don't have to have that. It just gives you better, like, water wicking, you know? It makes sure that you've got a consistent water coming up consistently. But I don't know that it's that important. I think you could use any old sponge, really. And then, yeah, you just get a roll of parchment paper and cut your spaces. I like this small Masterson's wet palette because it was actually pretty cheap. And if you buy the baking sheets, which are folded up parchment sheets that fill a baking sheet, if each quarter of that, when you unfold it, actually fits perfectly into this wet palette. So yeah, so that's all of it. I am not a wet palette painter. It tends to frustrate the bejeebus out of me, but when I'm doing something like this, where it's going to be so simple, let's see, we used Imperial Purple. So I need to get that sucker out. That's 6. That is not the correct purple. That is clear purple. That is not the correct purple. There it is. Yay, Imperial. Which is a great purple. Let me see. We could actually use Icy Violet to bring this up. Let me see. Will it work? Yeah, I think it'll work. You have a couple different choices here when you're highlighting purples. If you're going blue, then Icy Violet is a good mixed in. Like if you've got a bluish purple and you want to highlight it, that's a good good possibility. Otherwise, like Runic Glow is made to highlight purples. Like it's perfect for it because it's got magenta and white. So essentially magenta is going to give you more of a reddish highlight, and Imperial's kind of on the middle. Like Imperial is actually a bit toward blue, I would say. Yeah, it's baking paper, it's parchment. Maybe Castle X. I mean, I paint slow also, and remember with this, if you have a well palette like me with all these tiny little wells, like I paint for hours and I only ever have to add like a drop of water to keep my paints good. So it depends on what well palette you have. If you've got one with bigger wells, yeah, it's harder to keep the paint good for longer because the size of the well indicates how much air and water transfer you're getting. So you've got more surface area with bigger wells, which means your paint dries out faster. But with these little wells, which as you can see, they're about the size of my thumb, this is a 28 well palette, but unfortunately it's been out. Like everybody ordered it because I keep recommending it. So Cheap Joe's has been out for a while. Probably also the shipping situation. But if you ever can get one of these, if you like it, this I do feel is like the best well palette, period. Oh, yeah, so you need a palette, man. If you're using anything flat, much less a pizza box, which is absorbent, your paints are going to dry out overnight. Or, sorry, your paints are going to dry out in 2 flat seconds. That's more likely. But the point of a palette is that you've got a well, right? It's like a cup. And the fluid at the bottom of the well isn't interacting with the air. The fluid at the top of the well is. So that's where your evaporation is happening. So the smaller your well, the less surface area is interacting with the air, and the slower your paint dries. Which is why when I'm using my well palette, I add like at least 8 drops of fluid between paint and water, and that keeps my paint good for longer. So that is how a palette is meant to work as far as the well palette. But if you are just trying to get into painting and you don't want to buy a well palette and you just want to play around, I do always recommend people try both, because some people's painting style, especially if you use your paint thicker, you may like the wet palette a bit better. When you start trying to do really thinned paint applications though, like when you start going, what's a wash? What's a glaze? How do I do that? Then the wet palette's a little bit more challenging because you really have to mix each brush full before you apply it. At that point, I like the well palette a lot better because it helps you learn those thin paint consistencies. All right, let's do purples. Yeah, not plastic. Do ceramic. Always do ceramic. Plastic is just the paint's going to stick to it. The more you scrub it, the more paint is going to stick to it. And I mean, yeah, it's $2, but you could get a ceramic palette for like $10 and it would last you forever and be really easy to clean. So your mileage may vary. Do what you have to. Everybody's on a budget or has constraints or doesn't believe me and wants to try it out for themselves. And that I respect. Do not just, take whatever you hear on the internet as gospel, even if it's coming from Anne. Right, exactly. Well, exactly, Valendar. So for you, I'd say wet palette would be even better because it would save you having to clean that porcelain tile. Unless, of course, you don't clean it, in which case, well, whatever. But yeah, well palette when you're doing thin paint applications. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see how these work. I'm going to set up my purple and I'm going to set up some runic glow. I decided to go that way. And I am actually going to set up a little bit of white because you always want some white. It's like just a painter's habit. And I'll want this white when we get to the black as well. So might as well. And make sure you shake your paint up really well because you don't want any of that watery binder in there. You want it to be nice and thick and, Master Series is fluid out the gate, and so it will start thinning itself on the wet palette fairly quick compared to other paint lines. Yeah, Cookie Tigress, you weren't on time, so you didn't hear my reasoning. But I'm using a wet palette today because I'm doing very simple, small details that don't take much paint, so I don't want to clean out my palette. And I should be able to highlight these very, very easily with just, a few drops of paint. If I'm using just a few drops of paint, all this stuff is very small. There's not going to be much paint going into this. Why should I, mix up big wells of paint if I'm only going to be painting little bits? So there's no point for that. I will also grab my Kraken ink. Kraken, tomato, potato. But anyway, because I may want to shade a little bit back here. So yes, shake your paint very well before you put it down the wet palette. If it has any binder in it, it's going to go to trash pretty much. And the thicker a paint you tend to like for example, if you enjoy tube paint, like I like the Scale Color Artist, this kind of wet palette, or this kind of palette is really made for thicker paint. It works very well with it. Because thicker paint's going to dry faster on a traditional palette, so putting it on a wet palette just makes sense. Although I tend to just mix mine with a lot of water and put it into wells. Oh, well, he doesn't have very many. I mean, he's gone really fast. Probably the part that's most useful is the shaded metallics on the gold HM Road Dog, because we wanted it copper, so I did a lot of shading on this. This was my shaded metallics piece, pretty much, for you guys. Because y'all have seen enough NMM over the years. But that doesn't mean I'm not going right back to NMM, but, I decided to switch it up. All right, let's get a nice brush. What brush do I want to use? Usually with thicker paint, you want to use a fatter brush, but I don't really own a fatter brush. I have all skinny brushes, because this is what I do. So I'll end up using my kind of used... if I don't have a fatter brush, I'll use a bigger brush. And we'll use my kind of beat up Raphael for this. That's so weird. Obviously it was plastic, but whoa, I'm just looking at, I'm just that's wow. That creates trash on a level every time I paint that I don't want to think about. The poor environment. I guess using water, upsets the environment too, so I shouldn't, feel like that about aluminum foil. Alright, let's see if this works. I may need to go, almost straight up to runic. So what the wet palette lets me do is it lets me kind of test mixes. So how pale am I going to go to get a highlight I can see? Because there's not a crap ton of white in the runic glow. There's just white. And you can see how when I put this puddle down, it really thins it down just intrinsically because there's water leaching up from the wet palette. So it's not going to be thick. It's not going to stay thick when you pull a little bit out. I'm going to have to definitely throw some white into this, though. I'll tell you that. Because it's not going to show at all. So, yeah. The Runic Glow is not bringing it up as decisively as I would like. And that's something that will happen. It doesn't really matter. If I was doing a cape, that would be perfect. Like this subtle highlight that I'm getting here. But because I'm doing a small area, I really need to pop up my highlights and pop them up quickly. Or they're not going to show up. So I mixed some white in. And that's going to, see that line, that's going to pop up right away. But I don't mind having like a hard edge on this this piece. Like it's kind of a little beard tie anyway. It probably would have an edge. And sometimes on a little ring like this, you just need to do kind of an edge highlight to bring out the details and then concentrate more toward the middle. So I'm going to add some white to my Runic Glow, bring it way up. Now, when you want to thin your paint on a wet palette, you really kind of have to like bring the water in and mix up a brushful and then just go for it. Sometimes I keep little droplets. Like I take most of the little droplets off of my paper before I start. But I keep some little droplets on the side, so sometimes I'll grab some of that. Some painters grab from the well around the sponge, like this area. If they have a lot of water in it, they'll just grab water from that. You also can vary how wet your wet palette stays by the amount of water you load into your sponge and around your sponge. My sponge probably is moderate right now. It doesn't actually have a lot of water pooling around it, just like maybe a couple millimeters. But if I had it to where my palette paper here was almost floating on top of the water, then it would be a very wet palette. And that would wick up, I'd have a lot of fluid all around. So you can use a drier quote unquote wet palette. And again, that's something that if you decided you want to try a wet palette and you're very much interested in playing with it, that's something you can try, right? Add a lot of water and try to work, and add a little bit of water and try to work. You always need your sponge to stay wet, but there's a difference. Like, I think it was Jeremy Bonamont, hey, Nomadzig, who really floated his wet palette. Like, that paper was almost floating on top of water. He had so much water in his wet palette. And that was an extreme. So there we go. So that's a nice highlight on that purple. Now it does change the color of the purple. Notice that we go a little bit more pink, and that has the potential to fight with the beard. So I have to question whether I want to go that way, or if I do want to switch and go for the icy violet instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try it out. The great thing about this is it's such a small area that if I want to repaint it, I can repaint it. And it's not going to... Who cares, right? Yeah, exactly. And if you're in an arid place, as Cookie points out, you might have to keep your wet palette wetter because evaporation is a thing. If you're in a very arid area and you have troubles, you can also try getting a humidifier for the room you paint in. I would actually say that would be a pretty good investment. Because sometimes, unless you've adapted to the arid environment, but it can be much harder to paint in a very arid environment until you get used to it. It can make some techniques a little harder. So getting a small humidifier for the room, not a bad idea. Okay, so difference here. This is Icy Violet plus an Imperial Purple. Look at how much more blue that is. And then we look over here, and that's much more red. So this is the difference between these two colors that are both very good highlighters for purple, and it's the way it's going to shift it. And so you have to decide if you're going for the blue side or the pinks, the red side, as far as how you're going to go up. And those are the colors I would use. Those are Icy Violet for blue and Runic Glow for red. So as I mentioned, I feel like this kind of wars. The pink and orange are two of the hardest, especially a burnt orange like this. They really don't like to play together. So that's why I decided, okay, well, let's repaint this. Because it's just a little tiny bit. It's so easy. Thanks, Quindy. Good point. The SKU is always in the title. So anybody who wants to search out Dwarf to see the shaded metallics that I did on the gold, 44108. You can go to the Reaper YouTube and get the search bar and search by that. Right, yeah. I really do. I mean, I really do advise a humidifier. Well, especially for me, like I don't react well to like super dry air. Like it really doesn't, it makes me sleep not great too. So if I lived or moved to a really arid environment, I would be very tempted to get a humidifier for just to move from room to room. But some people adapt to the dry really well and really like it. So really the whole point is it's like just do whatever works for you for your painting. And if you find it relatively easy to adapt, so now we're back to the blue, but now we're going up with the icy violet. I'm gonna drag some of my purple over here so I have it. Now the icy violet has more white in it, so it is going to need a little bit more blending. So essentially I started with that little part there, which is lighter, but then I decided to add more purple in here because I noticed that I was not getting very good blending on this. So you will have to adapt on your wet palette depending on the amount of white. Whereas on a well palette, when you add a color with lots of white, you want to thin it more. Here, you're probably going to want to do more transitions. Since thinning on the wet palette can be a little problematic or difficult if you're starting out, you may find that you get more mileage out of just doing an extra transition in there, an extra layer between the two. So that looks a lot better. Like the blue in the icy violet plays off the orange nicely. This stands out a lot better, and the color just works better with the overall color scheme. And the reason is blue and orange are complementary, right? Right? Everybody say that? So that is what we're doing here. And you can, I mean, I paint, a lot of people use a wet palette with a huge brush and just go to town. And I'm using it very, very tiny implements. I'm mixing tiny little bits of paint. But that's just the way I roll, so don't think you're doing it wrong or anything. Well, I don't know. Look up online whether humidifiers are bad for electronics. If they are, then don't do it. And really, it's if you're in a super arid, like if you notice that you're having just trouble. I personally do find that when I go to like Santa Fe, if it's really during the dry season, I have trouble sleeping and I have trouble painting. So for me, it's worth it, but it may or may not be your shtick. All right, so let's get some of this stuff figured in here. We've got very simple folds on the sleeve. And I mean, I'm mixing such small amounts of paint. This is why I decided not to use my well palette today. It's because it just would be too much. Like, I wouldn't... Way too much. I'd be mixing all these wells of colors, and then I'd end up, like, wasting all this paint. And normally I don't care about wasting paint, because there is so much paint in each bottle. But today, I'm just like, eh. Alright, so a little bit of Kraken ink over here, or Kraken ink, however you want to pronounce the name of the mythical creature. I'm sure it had Kraken back in Greek times, because they seem to like the long A. Keep it low enough that it's not forming condensation. Thanks, Fubeka. Hey, there you go. Somebody who has a humidifier in their computer room. Just don't keep it, like, cranked the heck up. Thanks very much. Yeah, because my painting room is also my computer room. But it's not arid enough here to make me need it. But I definitely notice, like, when I visit my parents in Arizona and stuff like that, that if I paint while I'm there... I'm just going to use some Kraken ink to shade the bottom of that. And honestly, I'm just using the side of the brush. I do need one other thing, though. Where is my pure black? There it is. I want a little bit of pure black because I'm noticing spots that I've missed, like fingers. Oh, not ancient? I thought it was... For some reason, I thought it was an older creature. Now I want to check that. All right. Yeah, right. Okay, so sea monster, not necessarily kraken. Got it. Cool. So sea monsters existed, but not necessarily krakens. Well, that's because the myth says it's a sea monster, and they took liberties. But now we know, everybody. Now we know. I mean, if I was going to pick a sea monster to attack a princess, I would probably have gone with what Clash of the Titans did and gone a kraken. You could do worse. You could do worse. Oh, yeah, no humidifier necessary where you are, Quindy. What you will find then, Quindy, is you may want to try to cultivate wet blending as a technique. Because when you live in very humid areas, wet blending tends to be much easier. I do a lot of spot wet blending here. It's become just a part of my style. Well, then it may be Kraken, because, you know, if silly British people or Europeans made it up, they like the short A sound, in my experience. So maybe. I don't know. What's the actual pronunciation in the dictionary? Kraken or Kraken? Somebody look it up. Somebody's got the dictionary open. Now I want to make sure I'm saying it right. Yeah, exactly, D. Clearman. Release the sea monster. It's just not as cool. Putting some highlights. Donald Duck says quacking, yes. That's true, that's true. Kraken. Okay, so it's Kraken, not Kraken. Got it. Yay, thanks! Now I can correct my pronunciation. Thanks, everybody. Oh, yeah, AC is going to suck moisture out of the air, Quindy. So then you're kind of... Yeah, now you're in a manufactured arid environment. So I'm just mixing some of my Icy Violet into my purple and layering it up on this handle. I don't want to go too crazy with it because I don't want to attract too much attention to the handle here. But I do want to highlight on it, so, and a shadow on the other side. So krakening, Kraken, get Kraken. I can remember this. Boop. Alrighty. So for those of you who watch my personal stream, I'm seriously thinking of like canceling Tuesdays this month. I have a lot of stuff to work on for my special offer. And Thursday is a much better day for my personal stream anyway. So I'm considering doing that temporarily. Going down to 1 day a week because I really want... I had to prepare a class. Josh from Miniatures Monday is trying to set up a little online con with painting classes, and I told him I'd consider doing it. So I may be doing a class for that. So I really need to get in my class structures. I'm working out some new classes I'm very excited about. So, but I need to spend time on that. And it's involved time, right? You gotta actually get like an hour or two. Oh, interesting. Panic screaming. Yeah, no, Manzik, I'm all up for it. Not yet, because I think they're still finalizing the people in it. War Shadow, there's a lot of people like me who are tentative, like kind of looking at it. And I think they're looking at different formats and stuff. I'm sure that Josh is the one to ask, so his show does air today, so you should talk to him if you have time to watch him this afternoon. Okay, Icy Violet, a little bit more Icy Violet, and this is nice. I mean, the wet palette is really nice here because you can just kind of, I can use it for my spot wet blend. And again, we're using such small amounts of paint. Like, now if you want this handle to be shiny, by the way, you want to do a line highlight on it, like an actual line of light going up the side. I want it not to be super shiny, more like painted wood, so I'm gonna just keep it with a slight highlight and not go too crazy on that. But I mean, the wet palette is nice when you've got all these little things and you're just like, yeah, I need a couple of highlights. I don't really need to, like, you know, mix up all these colors right now. I just need them need the two main colors, and I can just do mixes just on the fly. So it's much easier and faster to just do it this way. I would not paint a whole miniature like this, and I definitely wouldn't do a competition level figure like this. It's not my groove. It's not where my happy place is. But I mean, David always paints with a wet palette. He's one of the inveterate wet palette painter. I missed a mold line there. I might have to go back and catch that. I'll catch it after the stream. Otherwise, there will be screams as I carve away part of the plastic that I've already painted. I guess I could do that, but yeah. I'll just do it at the end of the stream. I miss mold lines a lot, especially on Pro Tips models, because I'm trying to clean them quickly. But if I send this one to Ron, I'll clean that up, which I was thinking he was going to go to Ron. I doubt he has tons of people like lining up to paint Dark Dwarfs, so he probably would appreciate a painted version. But I could be wrong. Maybe he does. All right, so higher highlight. Pretty good. Need a little bit more, I think, on this sleeve here. To bring that down. There we go. Bring out the details. And I can always glaze if I feel like I've gone too far. Or add a little bit of white to my color if I feel like I haven't gone far enough. Now, on a 28, this is a very basic paint job. This technique that I'm doing is like my old style, where everything gets highlighted up to the same level. In reality, if you're painting all these different surfaces with the same purple, some are going to be shiny and some are not necessarily. So if I had decided, say, that this was a shiny band that had been like enameled purple, then I would be painting it more like an MM and less like, just a cloth woven band tying his beard together, right? I think the thing that he was thinking about is in April, because I wouldn't have been able to commit to it otherwise. War Shadow. I always need a couple of weeks. I need a couple of weeks to make sure that I can fit stuff into my schedule, since I'm so tight for time all the time. It's another reason I'm going to be dropping my Tuesday stream, I think, for April. There's just so much, like I'm working on my my Sky Earth NMM PDF for my special offer that I want to launch in May, so that means April is when I have to get everything done. And that's a really in-depth PDF. Like, it's going to be at least 10 pages, if not more, and it's going to require a lot of photographs and stuff, so, and visual properties for me to create. So I think I've noticed that I'm stressed out with the Tuesday stream lately. Like, I feel like streaming on my channel is taking a lot of time. And I really want to be able to do really good content for my special offer. So, and to do things like Josh's class. I also want to start doing a couple of online classes, because that's part of my special offer. So all this is like a balance of time, right? Yeah, I haven't decided what class to do. I've got 2 face classes kind of prototyped out, 2 different ones. One specifically on a bust face and like how much more you can do, right? Like skin texture and freckles and scars and stuff like that. And like really in-depth eyeballs. And then I've got more of a general painting faces class for more like the 28mm. So maybe I'll do that one. But I also have like a leather class that I want to do, but I haven't mapped out as much what the content will be. I have my color class, which is, paint mixing and pigments in addition to color theory. All of these things are going to be stuff I'm going to be trying out. You paid my patrons who are in the audience here. You guys are my test bed for this. If you recall, I was going to do a special offer that essentially had you guys help me test my classes, my new classes. And David had a really good suggestion the other day. Yeah, streaming is a big commitment. Right, Shadow Raven. And for me, I have to really watch my bottom line, right? Because, I mean, I'm squeaking by. I'm squeaking by financially, and I want to be better than squeaking by. So the Twitch helps, but it doesn't help a ton, right? And so you always have to evaluate, like, is the time I'm putting in here really a good investment compared to the amount like that I could make if I opened up my commissions, right? Like, because right now my commissions are closed because I'm slowly working through my backlog And it's a slow work through because I've devoted time to other things. So, you know, it's a balance. And if it means I have to stream a little less, that's fine. I mean, I don't get huge numbers on my streams anyway. Mostly it's you guys who are loyal and really like to see me work. And I'll keep the Thursday stream forever. Pretty sure here. But Tuesday, like early in the week, is when I usually have to like be fast off the mark and be really productive. And sometimes I feel like I'm kind of tight on time. All right, so just get some little highlights. Now here, if I decide this is a wooden shield, I'm doing some texture. See that I'm doing some lines there. Yeah, Grey Wolf. Like, I hate to sound like, you know, you hate to talk about money. Like, it's our culture, right? Nobody wants to talk about money. It's like, I grew up in a family, I was terrible with money for decades because my family never talked about money. So I never learned how to handle money. So now I'm trying to be really good, stick to a budget, and make enough to add to my retirement fund, right? Because you don't want to just be squeaking by. You want to actually save for retirement, especially because I started really late because of the aforementioned dumbness. So for me, my best Anne right now is not just, you know, being able to pay my expenses, which right now I can, but also to be able to contribute to my IRA, right? So I need to make sure that I can make enough money to do those things. And if I can make enough money to do those things, then I am in happy land. Then I'm like, poof, awesome. But yeah, I mean, when you're freelancing, it can be a little bit, I mean, Patreon helps so much with this. This is why I love you guys who are on my Patreon so much. Because when I was doing freelancing the first time, there was no Patreon. And some months I would make like $2,000 and some months I would make 200. You know, and that kills you. Like, there's no way. Like, it's so hard to make it work as a freelancer. Like, you really have to apply and like be able to paint fast. And that's never been me. So yeah, it was really hard, but the Patreon lets me exist this way. Like, you guys, without you guys who are my patrons, I would be screwed. Reaper helps too. Like, being able to do this stream and still work part-time for Reaper helps a lot. Yeah, thanks for the Nomad Zeke Patreon link. If you are interested, if you like my teaching style, it has a ton of content on it. So if you sign up at the $5 tier, you get so much right now because I've been doing it for over 2 years, almost 2.5 years now. Like, we are coming up on the 2.5 years. And so there is a crap ton of content. Alrighty. So I'm thinning down my line. Notice I'm using some highlights on either edge to really bring the purple out away from the black. I do need a little bit of a shadow around the stuff here. I don't want to necessarily highlight right up next to it. But I can put a little bit of a highlight here. Hold on, let me get it. Right, Father, exactly. Like, I need to save for retirement. Like, if I'm going to be a working artist for the rest of my life, essentially, I'm going to need a retirement fund, right? And I'm so happy that I have, like, you know, a chunk of money socked away, but I need to keep adding to it, right? I started so late, guys. I didn't start saving for retirement till I was, like, past 45. It's really late. So really my goals are to, like, hustle and to pay more than I've got a couple different retirement accounts, and maxing out the IRA is nice, but I have an extra one as well. So the really, really gravy would be to able to, like, you know, make up some ground. Because I worry, you know, you worry about your retirement as you get older. And if you are dumb like I was, then you don't maybe have a plan yet, and you're like, OMG. Yeah, you are smart. Nomad, you and David. David, like, started way early. Like, that man is really, he has great food habits and great money habits, and this is why I love David, among many other reasons. But he helps me get a better mindset about saving and about, you know, just not buying a bunch of stuff, and also he's just got a really healthy attitude toward food. Like, amazing parenting on the part of David's parents, okay? They get the parenting award as far as I'm concerned. It is funny when you look at your boyfriend who you're both older and you look at the parents, you're like, great parenting. It was a long time ago, but great parenting. Oh no, Rebecca. Well, but I mean, house is an investment too, right? I guess it really depends on your financial goals, and you have time to make that back up if you can, if you want to start. I assume you started contributing to it again, or did you not? I mean, it's up to everybody's saving style is up to them. I mean, I have friends back in Texas whose their retirement strategy is the house, the real estate retirement strategy, and that's fair because if you own your house, then your the amount of money you need to live, dives. And it depends, how old you are and how how much time you've got that you plan to work and all that stuff. I wish that our culture talked about this stuff more. Like I remember vaguely having kind of an econ unit in high school, but the only thing I remember talking about with that was like the stock market, and it wasn't really a good unit on the stock market. Oh, good. Well, yeah, me too. It took a lot of dumb mistakes on my part too, Fubeka. And really, Reaper helped me turn my finances around because I held that job for so long and I got to, a supervisory manager position. So it really helped me stabilize and start having better habits, right? Yeah, finance decisions do vary by person and how old you are, right, Father? Because if you're younger and you've been saving earlier, then maybe it's not as bad of a call, right? It depends. It always depends. Yeah, that giant meteor foreshadow, yep. It does. But I have to have something. You never know. Right now, so all of my craziness in my life, all my, medical issues and the divorce and everything have just taught me you can never depend on anything. So always have a backup plan to your backup plan, right? But do have your backup plan. Don't just give up and say, oh my God, I can't plan for anything. You have to make a plan, but, So I like to have, a couple things that I can play with. Yeah, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Yep. Yeah, well, Chibi, and that's what I think Justin McCoy, those of you who know Secret Weapon, Justin and his wife bought a house quite a while ago in Sacramento area, and it's not as crazy as the Bay Area, but yeah. Actually, I laughed because my dad told me when we saw my dad the other day, he was like, yeah, me and, some of my Navy friends were looking at buying a condo in the Bay Area back when I was in the Navy and had you, and I was like, oh, you wish you would have done that. It would have appreciated beyond. It would have been crazy appreciation. But yeah, so mostly Anne's happy zone is I want to get to the point where I can reliably, maybe not max out, because my 401k, I have a solo 401k, and it's got a pretty high, max. I don't know if I'll ever maybe making enough money to do that. It would be nice. But I want to be able to contribute and feel comfortable and still be able to work toward my goals. So the reason we got onto this in the first place is that Twitch is great and all, but it really does not give you too much money. I mean, Twitch takes a pretty hefty cut off the top compared to Patreon. Patreon is you can tell that Patreon was created by artists who are trying to help other artists. And there are still plenty of critics of Patreon out there. But I defy you to find another platform for artists that only takes a 5% or 6% cut. Although I think that now it's not grandfathered in. Now they've got a scaled structure because they started offering a lot more stuff. Oh, I was debt-free years ago. That's actually one of the things that Reaper really helped me do, Fubeka. Love debt-free. Yeah. Nice, Twistodoma. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the dream, right? You kind of want to be able to do fun things when you no longer have to work all the time. Fun stuff. There we go. We're just getting... And again, I'm just doing... Here's a little look at my palette. See, I'm just doing you can kind of see my transitions. I'm just mixing them all together. And because it's a wet palette, this little dab of paint will stay wet. Now, it is, since I added white, it's going to be very opaque, so I'm going to have to reach over and grab some water, thin it out a bit, see? And that's what I mean when I say you've got to, thin every brush full. You really are kind of trying to get it to the right. And if you have a good conceptualization of what your paint should look like to get it to blend, then you're good. But if you haven't quite gotten there yet, that's why I recommend working with a well palette a little bit, because well palette lets you just add a certain number of drops and then test it out, and the paint doesn't change appreciably from moment to moment. So you're able to kind of like train your sense of what should the paint look like when I want it to layer, right? So being able to do that is very useful. And then once you've internalized that, where you're like, oh yeah, that's a good layering consistency, and you've gotten to the point where you feel like you've got a good gut sense of it, then the wet palette opens up all sorts of glorious doors for you, because then you can mix brush by brush and you'll get the perfect consistency each time, just like David can. Yeah, Twisted Oma, for sure. Like, the younger people don't like to, like, think about it, and they think they've got plenty of time. But, I mean, the people like David, who started, like, really early saving for retirement, are, like, sitting pretty now, even, you know, when he could probably... if he didn't live here, he could afford to retire in his late 50s, maybe mid-50s, probably. I don't know. He's done really well. I just wish, like, this... There are lots of, like, education reforms I wish would happen, but, you know, teaching kids about money better and giving them better money skills is one of the things. And I think a lot of schools leave that to the parents, but I think that's kind of a mistake sometimes, because even really good parents, and mine were good parents in many ways, obviously I turned out pretty well, but I feel like I just did not have a good grounding, a good understanding of finance, which was ironic because my dad was an accountant. So... Yeah, do as I say, not as I did. Well, and people they're always going to make their own mistakes, though, right? Everybody is. Like, it's a rare child that listens and follows, you know, your good advice. But at least you said it. And sometimes it does penetrate our hard-headed little child minds. I was a pretty hard-headed child, so... Maybe if they had tried, I wouldn't have listened anyway. Yeah, I'll leave it because of no politics, Shadow Raven. I know. I got into a lot of debt in college from that kind of stuff, so... But, I mean, at one point, I think the most debt I was in, though, and it's not even close to some of my friends now, like, the most debt I was in is a little bit over 18 grand. A lot of credit card debt from school. And I've been debt free for a long time now. And now I'm to the point where I've like gotten unscared of the credit cards enough that I can take them out and pay for something, and then I go and pay it off, right? But I still tend to avoid credit cards when I can. Physics was hard, but it prepared you for a lot of non-physics. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Oh, nice. That's actually a great tactic, Fubeka, on the allowance debt. Yeah, that's really useful. You're good. Dang. Good parenting, Fubeka. Because that'll sit, right? That'll stick, probably. Stuff that you learn to hate as a kid, that tends to stick with you as you get older. Sometimes those beliefs don't serve you, but I bet that that debt hatred belief will serve them pretty well in today's world. All right, gonna touch this up. I had a finger I needed to touch up on this side too. And I missed a spot underneath. Sometimes all these undercut areas, you want to look at the model from underneath so that you can hit the areas like underneath these plates where you might have missed paint. So that's why I have a little bit of my pure black out, just for those areas. Yeah, I agree, Nomadzique. No matter how advanced we get, we always need people to fix our stuff, right? Even when I was in school, trade skills were being kind of like, you know, nobody wanted to do that. Everybody wanted to go into computers. Which is great, but computers cannot fix your plumbing. At least not yet. I guess if our plumbing became all computerized, then maybe they could. But yeah, there's always going to be jobs that are just people knowing how to mechanically fix things. Alrighty, there we go. Looking good on the purple. Yeah, I mean, either works, you know, and it's not like it's a irrevocable choice. If you went to tech school, he could swap back and decide to go to college, or vice versa. He could give college a try and then, you know, decide it's not for him. I think a lot of, I know as a kid, I felt pressured to go into college right out of high school. But I don't know if that's still a thing. Sagebrush, that's good. Has that stuck with you, Sagebrush? Were you able to, like, you know, have a good, like, savings, like, thing, like, habit? Did it turn into a savings habit that you carried into adulthood? Because that's really cool. All right, I think we got all our purple highlighted. We're pretty good. All our purple's looking good. I like it. All right, so let's do black. So my purples, we saw the transitions. I've got my black stuck all the way up here, sadly. It's nice when you can, like, put your colors that you're working with next to each other. Now, I am going to do blue liner, though. If you want a really blue highlight on your black, use Nightmare Black. But I think today I'm in a blue liner mood, which is more of a gray. So I'm going to use my blue liner. I'm going to put that right next to my white so that I can make useful mixes. Oh, yeah, scholarships. That's a good point, Carrie Michael. Yeah, that is true. You do get out of that habit of that school mentality, right, Grey Wolf? That's a true. Yeah, Twisted Oma. Well, that was my situation, right? Like, my parents didn't like to talk about money. They didn't want to talk about money. They pretty much said it was none of my business. So none of my business turned into me making a crap ton of bad financial decisions when I was older. And only now do I feel like I'm starting to recover. Yeah, Fubeka. Yeah, well, that's like me learning more about art after I got out of college than I did in art school. You know, sometimes college does not seem to be worth it. All right, so I'm going to mix some blue liner together with some white. And the color that you get is a blue-gray, which I really love. And Nightmare Black has a lot more blue in it. So Nightmare Black and blue liner appear to be similar colors when you look at them. But the difference is that blue liner is made in our liner base, which has a black pigment pre-added to it. That's a little bit, I won't say weaker, but it's a little bit more translucent, which is why liners thin so nicely. So even that dark blue is showing up really, really heavily when I put it on here. So that means I need kind of a transition between those two. I want a blue just a little bit. But, so that means its main pigment load is black because we're putting it, the liner base, our standard liner base is a black base. But Nightmare Black is actually built in a blue base. So it has a heavy front load of deep blue pigment, which is why it shifts so much more blue when you add white to it. So if you want to experiment, you can, you know, load those both up on your palette, maybe, or even your wet palette. So you can just do a quick mix experiment to see and try adding the same amount of white to Nightmare Black as you do to blue liner and notice the different color. So when I want a very kind of cartoony highlight for like shiny patent leather black, then I will go with Nightmare. But if I want a more realistic one, if I'm working more on say a historical model or something that I want more realism, I will go with the blue liner instead. Because I still want the faint hint of blue, like almost a skylight like that. But I don't want too much. Yeah, sometimes it's hard. Like, Boozy, it took me years. Like, I don't think I did not have a good savings account until I was 40. Like, it honestly was hard. I had so much debt And I always, like, for a while I tried to save alongside my debt, but then I realized that it was far more effective to use the money to pay down my debt so I could get rid of it. But it took me a very long time to have savings. Although I think that you can take tiny steps toward it. I mean, I will say that I am a follower of Total Money Makeover guy. He got me out of debt. What's his name? Dang it, I can never remember. Yeah, Ramsey. I'm a Ramsey follower. Like, I'm not a hardcore Ramsey follower, but seriously, his plan got me out of debt, got me an emergency fund, and generally put me on the road to having decent financial footing. So I cannot, his Total Money Makeover book is well worth it if you are struggling with debt and not being able to save. Just as an inspirational book, I still re-listen to it sometimes. But yeah, some things that he does, I'm like, well, not for everybody, but that's true of anything, right? Anybody's plan. But I feel like his basics are very, very solid. Yes. Right, sagebrushes. Well, and even the tiniest savings per week, like even $5 a week still is going to add up, right? Especially if you're somebody who has a lot of emergencies like just pop up, and who of us doesn't, right? There's always something. There's always that extra $200 we had to shell out to fix the car or whatever. So I found that having an emergency fund, his idea of establishing a baby emergency fund, even if you feel like you really can't afford one, is so worth it because it cushions you against the inevitable. And it makes you feel like just a lot more relaxed and less stressed out. So now I keep a sizable emergency fund. Even though I could put that money into my retirement savings, I feel better having it close to hand, just in case. Especially with having gone through so much surgery earlier in my life. Each one of those surgeries was a $6,000 bill. That was after insurance. So I believe in keeping a fairly sizable emergency fund, because you never know. But again, everybody's got to have their own plan, right? Everybody's circumstances are different. Alrighty, so a little bit of highlights here. Keeping most of the surface dark, notice? Yeah, right, Smallish Sam, right? Emergency fund. Not everything he says is good for everybody, right? But yeah, basic concepts. And he makes you, like, I listened to his book on audiobook, and I really love it on audiobook because he narrates it, and he's really, really psyched up. And so it gets me, like, believing, right, that I can do it. Or at the time it did. So, yeah. Yeah. If you're in struggle and you need some assist, like I do really feel like his, establish an emergency fund, then work on your debt. Then fill out your emergency fund to be a little bit bigger. Then finish, then really put your energy toward your debt. I have a friend who's paying off, like, I think she started with like $40,000 in debt, and she's almost debt free now. It's about 5 or 6 years later, but she used his system, his debt snowball thing. And she had moments where she fell off the bandwagon, but now she's almost debt free. Oh, nice, Sagebrush. You're hardcore. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, that should help Bubek. I mean, any decision that takes some stress out of your life is worth it, right? We all have money stress, it seems like. And it's the worst. All right, gonna get some of this blue down on it. I like how the bag looks. It's real soft. It's a real soft leather, but it's got enough definition that it stands, that it's its own thing. I don't want it to fight for attention with everything around it, but I want there to had attention put into it. So really keeping your highlights like softer, especially I decided I didn't want it to be a shiny leather so much. Now, if we had done like an orange lighting on this guy, I would need to tint these highlights orange. Oh, yeah. It is stretch time. Thanks, Grey Wolf. Oh, dear Kiriniko. That's terrible. You know what? When you go through all the health testing and then they're like, oh, hairball paste, and it was an $8 solution. Yeah. That's a thing. Stretch time, everybody. But yeah, when you have pets, like I have a specific dog emergency fund that's separate from my regular emergency fund. And that helped because when Kiri got sick toward the end, I could just go and pay her vet bills and not have to worry about... I didn't have to worry about having to say no, right? If it had been something where we could have cured it. Yeah, Marine Corps, yep. I found that same comparison, but with my health sagebrushes after I went through like 6 surgeries in 3 years. When I went back to the dentist, I used to be terrified of the dentist. When I went back to the dentist, it was like, this is nothing. So I have no dentist fear now. I don't care what they do to me. It can't be as bad as intestinal surgery. It's all relative, right? Oh, stretch your spines, everybody. And your shoulders. Oh, boy, that's a good stretch. I love that stretch. Yeah, it puts things in perspective. Like, the dentist, like, gives me no problem now. I'm just like, yay, dentist, I get to not work for a while. Oh, yeah, Sarduki, yeah. That is the problem. Like, sometimes your vets are saying that with the best intentions, right? They're like, well, let's try this just to be sure. But I think sometimes that vets tend to overlook the simple a little bit too easily. But they're used to seeing, like, the extreme cases, right? So, I don't know. Oh, dental bill. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, $6K. I put several $1,000s into my mouth over the last several years as well. HM Road Dog. So, again, fixing stuff that, well, I guess I grind my teeth at night, so it was just like putting cracks in my teeth. Yeah, when you only have one alternative, decision making is easy. Ah. Oh yeah, Karniko. Yeah, don't feel bad. It's done. You did what you did. There's no room for feeling bad or beating yourself up. You did it, you moved past it, you learned from it. And if your kitty is still okay, then you've won. So, don't beat yourself up. Beating yourself up is never worth it. It just makes you keep feeling bad about stuff you've already felt bad about. Which is ridiculous. Doing some cat cows and I'll be back. We humans just love to beat ourselves up, and I'm bad about it too. I've been working on that. Silly humans that we are. Some of us are better about it. David never beats himself up. Again, he's a great role model. My boyfriend is very good for me. All right, here we are. Ah. Interesting, Shadow Raven. Yeah. No, Strato. You can tell, though. Like, I just told you the way to find out is just add a little bit of white to the paint. Get your wet palette out, because then you can just add a bunch of drops of color without, like, wasting a bunch of paint. And just put a little bit of white into them. You're going to see whether they shift strongly yellow, strongly blue, or if they don't. To do that would be essentially giving away formula information, and Ed is very, very anti-giving away formula information. So, yeah, just add white. If you put a drop of blue liner and a drop of Nightmare Black next to each other, and a drop of, say, Kraken ink, and then you add a little bit of white to each one, you're going to see what color it is just right off the bat. It's so easy. And you also get the bonus of seeing what color it makes, and seeing if you would like to use that color on something. Like, I discovered that blue liner and white makes a beautiful gray blue. I use it all the time. Yeah, my cat that had hairball problems also hated the paste, Kariniko, so I feel you. All right, let's get some black done. I hydrated. We're all good. Let's get my brush again. Yeah, just add white. You can also just thin it with water, but I think it's even easier when you add white. Alrighty, so now we're doing... And you can see how my paint is creeping. Look at how much the wet palette... And I'm using a fairly dry wet palette at this point, but the paint has still been creeping as it thins itself on the wet palette. So it becomes much more watery, which is why if you use tube paint, wet palettes are a great tool. Thicker paint. But I mean, I'm using MSP on this and it's just fine. It just, means that my paint is slowly thinning itself down. Alrighty, let's get some color mixed up to get these boots kind of highlighted. And I don't want too much. And I realize that some of this is probably armor plates, but I'm just going to paint them like they're black and just deal with it. Because at this point I've already done the armor and I'm not going back. Some of these plates I thought were parts of the boots, and then I decided I was incorrect, but I'm going to just live with it. Yeah, I always kept, and I will always keep a pet insurance policy on my pets. Especially after Curie's cancer. That saved us so much money. That would easily have been over $10,000 in care, and they reimbursed us 90%. So that sold me on pet insurance. Especially if you're not sure if you've got like a lot of cash to deal with an emergency. I think it's a real peace of mind thing. You still have to find the money to pay for the care up front, but you will get the money back, so. I don't know if everywhere offers pet insurance, though. In the US, it's a big deal, but. But yeah, I learned to love it with all of the dogs we had. Because at one point we had 4 dogs and a cat. Alright, a little bit of highlight. Just a little bit of highlight on the boots black there. Again, I'm going to keep them a little bit more dull. I don't think he's the kind of character to have really shiny boots. But a little bit of extra highlight, just a little bit to get those details out a little bit. That's good. All right, and then on the other side, and again, you want to keep most of the surface black if you can. If you want it to look black, it needs to stay dark. So make sure that you are shading a lot in between your highlights. Maybe dull down the edges of some of your highlights if it looks like the blue-gray is taking over. Oh, wow. Yeah, as the dog gets older, the pet insurance gets higher, too. And some breeds are considered higher risk. But you know what? Considering how prone Danes can be to bloat, I think it's worth it. I think your friend is right to have it. And some Danes don't, but that can easily be a $3 or $4 grand emergency bill. And if you don't do it, your dog dies. So I could see it. There we go, a little bit there. Can see it, get this out of the frame. There we go, now I can see it. All right, a little bit more of a highlight. We'll just do a little bit of edge, a little bit of an edge here to bring out that plate. A little bit of extra highlight here and here. And again, the wet palette makes it easy to switch back and forth between like this highlight and a slightly darker one if you want to blend things in. You can do a spot glaze with the wet palette. You have to just spread it out. So if you were going to do a spot glaze, you kind of want to get it, put it there, grab some water from like your edge of your palette and thin it down. The problem with doing a spot glaze is you pretty much have to mix it and use it instantaneously. So you can't really tune it very well because the water starts to wick right through the palette right away. And so all the fluid is going away. So doing a spot glaze is pretty much like one brush full if you're doing it with a wet palette, which is what I find annoying. So when I'm dealing with thinner paint, that's why I always reach for my well. Yeah, Danes are nice dogs. My old vet, my vet back in Texas had a Dane. She was a fan of the breed. I've been helping people in a complex here with their golden retriever puppy. Because, you know, once you learn dogs, suddenly, you know, you can help other people with their dogs if they want you to. And she's just I think that this is a youngish couple here. And I feel like the dog is just a very high energy dog because she's a golden. And maybe that wasn't what they were bargaining for. At least as a puppy, she's got a lot of energy. And I can tell that maybe she's just out energied the girlfriend, and the boyfriend is now the one I see walking her all the time. Great Danes think all dogs think they're lap dogs. Leo thought he was a lap dog, and he was a 100-pound Shiloh. Yeah, Declearman, good point. Yep. All right, there we go. There's black. I got a belt. I've got this little bag that I haven't done. I've got the hand to do yet, but you can see how that's coming up. So still noticeably black. I could bring a little bit more of a glaze if I really want to knock this down to make it look even more black, but I want some highlights. So for now, I'm going to work with that. And then as I get the black on other areas of the model, like the knuckles here and the glove, then I'm going to make the judgment call of if I want to knock it down or if it needs to be a little more dull. Yeah, the shield will be highlighted more with like kind of a wood grain pattern. I think I want to I kind of suggested a little texture here on the purple. But right now I don't want anything terribly shiny. Because he's got enough shiny on him. The armor is kind of like the shiny on this piece and the beard. So I want enough highlights so that all the surfaces are nicely showing up. But a lot of the stuff that I painted black is just kind of background noise, right? It's just bags and belts and, you know, a little bit of shirt sticking out. It's a neutral, and I chose it because it was a neutral. And I wanted something that wasn't too showy and distracting for these little parts of the model that are not that important. So, given that, I'm trying not to be too shiny on any of this. Let's get the bag from the front. I went too high down on that area. I want to knock that down. Brought that highlight up way too high. There we go. Glaze over it. Done. This bag is fun because it's got the nice folds in it, which is easy to highlight. Haha, Valendar. Well, the base won't be done, so that'll be a no. There we go. Just a little bit of highlights. But just a little is good enough, right? You don't need a ton of highlight on the black. You need to use a lot of April 1st. Hey, that's right. Thursday is my 18-year anniversary of working for Reaper. 18 years ago, Thursday, I showed up on Reaper's doorstep for my first day of work. That was when the shop was still in Louisville. And Dave was like, why are we hiring a concept or a miniature painter? He came around eventually. Mostly because I had cute dogs. Dave is a sucker for cute dogs. And to Dave, almost all dogs are cute. But yeah, that was the old Louisville. Not the original Reaper. Like, the original Reaper was like a barn almost out by the graveyard. Big old warehouse. But then, or actually, it would have been Al's garage. And then the warehouse out by the cemetery, which was so fitting. And then it was the third iteration of Reaper. Yeah, and the funny thing is that, what is today? Is it the 30th? Nope. Tomorrow is David and I's 2-year anniversary of beginning dating. So we went out for our dinner on Saturday just because it's easier to celebrate on the weekend for us. But our actual anniversary is the 30th. Or Adepticon 2019, which is when we started dating. He says the only thing he would change about me now is the puns, so I'm going to keep punning. It's blue liner with white warshadow. I don't like using straight grays. I like using blue grays or brown grays. Sometimes even purple grays or red grays. So it all depends. Here I've already got purple and red on the model, so I don't want to go those ways. So blue is a nice sidestep. It doesn't... the brown wouldn't work as well because we got a lot of brown on the armor. So I want a little bit of contrast, which is why I went with the blue-gray. And the blue-gray is really my favorite highlight to use on black. I feel like it goes with pretty much everything. And it doesn't fight. It tends not to fight with things. David would agree with you, Shadow Raymond. He is not a punster. Although he has started, on occasion, punning. If it's a physics or a math pun, he considers it acceptable. I think I'm turning him around. He's going to be very dismayed when he starts punning on a regular basis because it's contagious. Then he'll really be, like, the one thing he dislikes about Anne. The one less than ideal thing about Anne. At first I tried to, like, spare him, but I'm afraid of punning it. Minor punning is just a part of who I am. I tend not to go overboard with it. I'm not, like, punning all the time, but every once in a while, yes. Especially when it's silly. I like silliness. Happy both anniversaries. Both anniversary. Yes, I'll have to say it on Thursday. I'll be like, happy anniversary to me. That's right, we were going to do a giveaway or something. I need to remind Justin about that. A giveaway for Anne's 18-year anniversary. Little touches of highlights. Got a little bit too much on that thumb. Whenever the area that you're highlighting starts to look a different color than the rest of the glove, that's when you know you have to knock your highlight back. And a little bit of extra light toward the top is okay, but you want to watch it. When you've got a really thin line like this black glove bit behind that metal, then you can keep a very small bright highlight just so that it shows up as being slightly different. Oh, a little bit too much. Grab your blue liner. Knock that down. There we go. I gotta remember the belt goes here, so I've got to get that too. Yay! 16 months. Robin, thank you. Hard rock humor, yes. Oh god, no, Valandar. Too much work. I prefer spontaneous punning. That's why I say I'm not a real punster. I did not go to great lengths. I'm an opportunistic punster. There we go. There we go. That's what I am. If I am presented with the opportunity to make a pun, especially if it is a very silly pun, I will go for it, because silliness is part of manliness. You guys don't see me be silly most of the time, but I definitely have silly moments. All right, so line highlight on top of the belt here, because if there's any weathering, it's going to be on the edge. And if I want to suggest some weathering, it's hard to do it on 28, but belts tend to crack vertically. So if you want to do that, you would want to do more of a stipple on that line instead of a straight line to suggest wear and that the belt was cracking. And if you have room to leave tiny lines to suggest that, you can. But if you're going to do that, make sure you do it everywhere. Yes, pun damage. Pun damage is when you've done a good job. So now I've got to walk that out. So yeah, so if you want to suggest that the belt is more worn, use a stipple. Little dots and lines. If it's a brown belt, you want to use a tan color for that, a light tan. But that's enough to carry that. I can't really see the belt on this side. Good enough. We can definitely see the belt in back, and it's kind of had some paint rub-off issues, so we'll fill that in. We are definitely getting... Yeah, I make puns. I'm definitely an opportunistic punner. I don't go out of my way to make puns. I don't like to inflict those on everybody around me all the time. But when an opportunity comes up for a silly pun, I embrace it. Oh dear. Okie dokie. Yeah, if you're punning in text, I'm just going to ignore you because that's what makes me not a real punster, is that sometimes I just find them kind of annoying, so I just ignore them. Puns for the sake of puns are something I don't do, but I know a lot of people get a lot of enjoyment out of it, so go and do you, people. I tend to like punny t-shirts, so that's the pun that keeps on giving. You just have to like wander around so different people can see you. Like, I just ordered an anniversary present for David, which I ordered myself one too, which is the Animal Spirits t-shirt from NPR. You guys familiar? It's from Planet Money, I think. But animal spirits are what powers the stock market's ups and downs. It's just just the investors' like kind of gut feeling toward things on any given day, and has nothing to do with reality. So the Animal Spirits t-shirt is a squirrel holding a martini glass, and instead of an olive, it has an acorn on a toothpick. It's fantastic. So that's my new t-shirt. Good morning, love. How's it going? Not working on it, Pendrake. Too much else. As I was just saying, I'm probably going to cancel my Tuesday streams for the month of April because I have special offer stuff I need to get done with. I have models I need to finish painting so that they can be special offers. And I'm really feeling like right now Twitch is not where my energy needs to be. Other than this show, of course. But I'll keep Thursdays. Gonna keep Thursdays. One day a week I can do. But early in the week when I have a lot of energy and I'm like, yeah, let's go. I have a lot of stuff to plan for in April. You didn't want to get out of bed. How are you? I'm good. I've got a lot coming up, a lot of stuff coming up in April, so I'm trying to kind of tame my schedule to give myself a little more time for that month. A lot of stuff coming up in May, I should say, that I have to finish in April. And other than that, pretty okay. Today, love, is tomorrow is my 2-year anniversary with my guy, and on Thursday is my 18-year anniversary of working for Reaper. I was just telling everybody. So 2 big anniversaries. Thursday's staying, Pendrake, but I really, really need more time. Like, nothing frustrates me. When I do that afternoon stream on Tuesday and Thursday, it eats the day. Like, I have very little time between lunch and the stream to do anything constructive. Like, most of the things that I get caught into, I need at least an hour and a half to work on. And so I really feel like I would like another day of the week to work on my commissions, my new class formats, outlining those classes so that I can get them going for you guys. Because remember, that's part of my special offer coming up is you guys being able to help me test my new classes, my new patrons, rather, I should say. So I've got that. I've got the commissions. I need to finish models for sale for May because that's another one of my special offers. I'm trying to do a lot, and I feel like I want that extra day every week. Your big versary, that's funny. Thanks, love. Yeah, work. Exactly, War Shadow. Yes. Oh, we had a very keto unfriendly dessert. We had sticky toffee pudding for dinner on our Saturday anniversary dinner because we went out on Saturday instead of doing it during the week. During the week is just harder because I get stressed out and it's harder for me to cook. I have no energy for it. So we tend to do lazy dinner or David cooking dinners during the week. So since our anniversary is during the week, we decided to go out Saturday instead. Sticky toffee pudding is pretty tasty. Yeah, it's worth it on anniversaries, right? And I determined that I'm not in keto, I should say, not in ketosis right now. My doctor actually did a test to see when she did my annual. And she reports no ketones, so I'm just doing low carb, essentially, and I just tend to fall out of keto earlier than other people. Probably because I'm really carb sensitive. I'm still only doing about 30 grams a day, but apparently for me, that's enough to not be in ketosis, which is fine. I don't have to worry then about kicking myself out and having to go through flu again. As long as it works for the weight loss, I don't care. Sticky toffee pudding is awesome. Yeah, low carb. I think it's just as effective, love, and it's a lot more, it gives me more wiggle room with what I cook and what I eat with David. And I will be forever thankful to Real Keto, though, for losing all those pounds. I never believed I could do it till keto came along, so. There we go, a little bit of highlighting. We're doing the black today. I'm just getting all this stuff kind of mapped in. And we're almost done. We're almost got all our black. We just don't have the shield yet. But with black, I'm just doing little touches of gray blue that I built with blue liner and white. This is one of my favorite black highlights. There we go. All right. Oh, yeah. Nice. Nice, Twisted Oma. Ketosis hypnosis. They do have... Well, I tend to do a lot of my own baking for keto, yeah. I still make keto cookies, because if I'm going to eat a cookie, I may as well... I make it with the erythritol, so it also is lower calorie. It's nice. Oh, yeah, that's old Twisted Oma. I don't think I have anything that old. Well, yeah, I guess I do. I kept some of the old Ralpartha pieces. Every time I move, I tend to give away or sell more of my stuff. So I'm going to do kind of an upwards slashing stroke here to kind of suggest like boards in the shield. If I wanted to do it like it was like leather or cloth over a wooden base, then I wouldn't do that, but... I'm just going to kind of draw out a rough suggestion of texture. And then I can interrupt this with washes, glazes, etc. Cheesecake balls. Yes. Yeah, he's almost done now. We're getting things done at a record pace here. I'm going to grab some little extra white here so that I can, if I want to accentuate some of these boards, I can find the edge. And then I need to also put some black in here because we need separators. Oh, sticky tack, poster putty. So either blue tack, or I think this is still blue tack. There are a couple different brands of blue tack. They're different. This one has been smushed down, obviously, so it's quite smushy. But some mounting putties work as well. Depends on if it's... Oh, your Reapers are in the mailbox. Nice. Yes. But I'm not telling you guys yet. I'm still debating, but I have her I need to prep her. It is not a human mini. It is a character you could use for a player character or a villain. And she's also Dark Heaven, so she's metal. Because I've been painting a lot of bones lately, so I want to get some metal back in. There. You guys will find out soon enough which one I'm switching to. I don't always have to tell you. I mean, I taunt you enough with upcoming minis. But this one was just kind of, I was looking through my various characters and humanoids, and was like, oh, this one's cool. I forgot I ordered this one. So a little bit of extra highlight along the edges of the boards. Boards, quote unquote. Wood grain, whatever. To make them stand out. And we want to probably get these little pegs highlighted with extra highlights. I want to paint these guys over like they're metal. And then pop a little highlight on them. And then these guys. But that's pretty much what I'm thinking with the shield. I can refine it a little bit. I don't remember the name of the mini that I picked. And I still change it because I've got all these other minis over there. See, that's my ultimate taunt. It's just like, you know, I think I'm going to do this mini, but I haven't even prepped it, so I may not do it. I may change my mind last minute just to thwart you. Because I'm cruel that way. Because I was thinking about a couple of minis. So we'll see. Sometimes I just like to have my secrets until I like show you guys, because then it's more exciting. But Valandar is obviously like David, where if there is like a secret or a puzzle, he is like totally into unraveling it. I'm going to get a little bit more braiding at the edge here. I'm going to bring in more of a glaze to knock down these lines in the wood grain because they're a little bit too much. Ooh, that was a lot. So when you're trying to glaze with a wet palette, it can be easily overwhelming. Because like I said, it's hard to get real thin, an actual glaze that works. So that really knocked them down, but that's okay. I can still see them. There we go. Yeah, we're almost, we're looking good here. So yeah, just the silver in the base. I think next time. Well, yeah, but I mean, it's boring, Pendrake. I mean, I just use a file. I do not use any, unless it's like really a bad cast. I'd never have to use green stuff or anything. Unless it's got a really annoying mold line, but I don't think this one does. I think it just is. I try to prep them off stream because I'd like to get to the meat of whatever I'm doing. There we are. I feel like I've got too many boards though. Okay, I'm just gonna take that little board out of there. Just do 2 big boards. Or a big board. Move that one over. There. I actually don't wash my metal minis at all. I've never found it necessary. I just prime them. Primer takes care of it. So I just do the mold lines and then I prime it and then I do mold lines again and apply a brush on primer because inevitably you're going to miss a mold line. There we go. Kind of doing the boards there. And I usually... Yeah, I just with spray primers, I don't find it's necessary to wash the model. Like, mostly the solvents are going to stick that primer on there. There. A little bit of extra stylized wood grain. But I've always been a lazy prepper, Pendrake, so no, don't take my word as like what you should do. Always I've been a lazy prepper. I really just want to get to the model. And then I just deal with the mold lines if I see them. And I need to re-put a black line there between the purple and the black. Remember, when you're doing this, you do want to keep the majority of the surface black, or it will stop looking black and will start to look kind of dark blue-gray, or whatever color you're using. So we want to keep the majority of the shield black. Yep, over a nail. Yeah, you're fine. If that's what makes you happy, do it. It just doesn't make me happy, so I don't. I'm more like, you know, don't wash it. Look around for mold lines. Hit the obvious mold line, because there's always one obvious mold line, because a metal model is, you know, a press mold, so you're going to have one mold line that usually goes around the model. Prime it, and then after priming, I can see the mold line I missed, which is inevitably some weird extension of the mold line going around the model, and then start painting. It means I have to back out and, you know, redo an area if I miss something, but I am much more, I mean, I wash my bones, but I don't wash the metal. So I find that with bones, I'm just painting right onto the model. I need to do that. That is my priming. It's my first coat. But yeah, I mean, do it makes you happy. Whatever works for you. Valid. Just because I'm a lazy prepper, don't pattern after me. To be fair, when I'm doing like a very nice resin model, or if I'm doing a piece for competition, I am far more persnickety about prep. Because if you're doing that and you do a lazy prep job, you will get dinged on it. Because prep is part of what your model's being judged on. It's preparation. It's always at least 5 to 10% of your score. And if it's a really egregious, huge mold line, huge nasty mold line that you just did not take care of, it could really knock you down. There we go. Oh, yep, love music. Yeah, that's the equivalent when you're a 3D printer, right? Is you still find supports. You're like, dang it. Or the little tiny nubbies from the supports that you just didn't get quite the end of the nubby. I get those on when I order 3D prints from other people. I will admit, guys, that is part of probably another reason why I don't necessarily want a 3D printer, is just the vast amount of cleanup on all those supports. I'm like, I am such a lazy prepper. Oh, seriously. It's terrible. There. Now our shield looks nice. Yay, look at that. Great, let's get some blue liner. I'm going to build a glaze, a very fast glaze, because obviously, as we discussed, glazes tend to disappear. I'm going to glaze over all of this. That is going to take down some of those details and let it look more black. Whenever you feel like you've got way too many highlights for a surface to look black, take that glaze. And I used blue liner for that because it's such a nice, you know, you can thin it down and it dries so nice and transparent. So I still can see my details, but it knocked it down and now it really looks black again. Under hair I missed, yeah. Yeah, spray primer, if you have a weird climate with spray primers, yeah, brush on is perfectly fine. Nice, Rebecca. Oh, nice, yeah. Quindy. Chain the goblin to the bench. Right, yeah, resin cleanup is a pain, I bet. That is the problem with beautiful, beautiful resin, which I love. All right, guys, we got our black painted and our purple painted, and our model is almost finished. I forgot. I need to do like wood grain on the back of the shield here. I can do that. But probably not now because we're already late. So, what we did today is we talked about how to use a wet palette effectively. We talked about colors to use in highlighting purple that go with your color scheme. We talked a little bit about like a little bit of weathering, color choices, how much you highlight on black, glazing, using various aspects of using the wet palette, and pretty much all of that. And some prep notes. So next time we see this model, we're going to probably finish up the shield and the base and the silver and steel. And we'll try to do all of that and get him finished so that we can start our new mysterious model that I'm not announcing. Yeah. I love resin models. I do. Because it's just such a nice, clean medium usually. But gets nice, sharp detail, and I love that. And fairly minimal prep. I mean, compared to some other stuff. But yes, so there we are. And tomorrow is Sphinx Day. Sphinx Day! Remember, we were doing her jewelry and like finishing up her like areas so that we can do a finish on the wings, and then we're going to work on her base. So yeah, I hope you all had a great Monday. I am off to the grocery store as it is that day of the week. And I hope you all have a lovely one. Do we have a raid, Reaper? Reaper! Calling out to Reaper. I'm waiting for the raid to pop up. But yeah, I hope you guys had a good time. I like him. He's turned out well. I think Ron will be perfectly happy with him. I do need to finish that shield though, for sure. And remove that mold line, the annoying mold line, which I'll probably do after we go off camera. Yeah, I wanted him to be like a dark iron dwarf from WoW, from World of Warcraft orc zoologist. So, kind of the grayish brown skin. Yeah, that's kind of how I imagine dark dwarves being painted. All right, there we go. Oh, Dices, awesome. All right, y'all, have a fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow for Sphinx Day. Sphinx Day, bye.